All right, everybody, take two on the podcast, Saturncast number 21, here on Gematrinator.com. All right, little technical difficulty there, lost internet, trying to talk about Gematria and what I'm talking about on this podcast. Oh, boy. Sorry, guys, I got all kinds of alerts popping up at me now. Oh, boy. A little distracting. All right, so before my internet got cut out there, I was talking about this short film, Gematria, that was released in 2014. And interestingly enough, that was about, a year or so after Zach Hubbard started sharing Gematria on a blog on his website. And I guess this guy doesn't look like too totally different than Zach, but I don't know, he's kind of got a different ethnicity. Well, anyway, what's interesting about this character is that in Gematria, his name is Manny Haruplex, which sums to 142, just like the word Gematria, using the reverse alphabetic order. In fact, my name, Derek Tikori, summing to 142 in the alphabetic order as well. And like I said, I'll show you the rest of these organic syncs later on at the end. So you have this film, and this guy's just, kind of crazy. He's muttering numbers to himself. He's rocking back and forth. He's not making a whole lot of sense. He just comes across as a schizophrenic, more or less. And this isn't the only film where Gematria has been mocked, at least, as it appears. So there was this film called The Number 23. This was released back in 2007. And it's starring Jim Carrey. And in this film, he uses Gematria to reduce words to the number 23. And you'll see here he even has the English ordinal cipher mapped out on a board behind him. And he has various words calculated out using the alphabetic order. So this movie, again, it's called The Number 23. And interesting that it's released on the 23rd of the month, right? Because we know these Hollywood studios like to use numerology. Well, in the language of Gematria, using the reverse alphabetic order, number 23 sums to 223. And look at the date that it was released, February 23rd. The date written 2/23, just like the gematria of the word number, or the phrase number 23. So it's made to look crazy in this film, just like it is in that short film, no doubt. Of course, even, the short film does acknowledge at the end of it that people are using this to carry out ritualistic events by the numbers. So on this podcast, every week, I talk about how our mainstream media uses this code to fabricate fake news events. Now, there's an organic side to this, too. So sometimes what we decode might be organic numerology. And in the second half of this podcast, after the break, we'll talk about some deaths that have occurred by the numbers. And, we're going to discuss whether or not these are murders, whether or not they're sacrifices, or if people are just simply dying by the numbers by this code. So to kick this off, we're going to talk about the headlines from this morning. We had an airplane crash out of Seattle-Tacoma Airport. And this story is pretty funny, right? You have an airline mechanic, and later on they corrected their story. They said he's not a mechanic, but a ground service agent who hijacked a plane, essentially, and crashed it on, Keytron Island, killing himself and injuring nobody else. So, first of all, this language of Gematria is often coordinated with dates on the calendar. And that's often where you see these alignments, and that's where this stuff really becomes undeniable. So let's look at yesterday's date, August 10th, 2018. This date had what's called a full numerology of August 10th. 8 plus 10 plus 20 plus 18 equals 56. In the reverse alphabetic order, using the rules of numerology to reduce the numbers, the phrase plane crash equals 56. This plane crash comes from Seattle, Washington, and Seattle, Washington with the abbreviation equals 56. At first, they said he was a mechanic. Using the alphabetic order, the word mechanic, M the 13th letter, E the 5th, C the 3rd, and so on, mechanic equals 56. This man was an employee of Horizon Air. Horizon Air sums to 56, again, reverse reduction. And this plane took off from SeaTac Airport. SeaTac Airport, this is the official abbreviation for Seattle-Tacoma Airport, the main airport out of Seattle, Washington. And in reduction gematria, SeaTac Airport equals 56. Also interesting that August 21st is the 222nd day of the year. We mentioned how Seattle, Washington equals 56 in reduction. Well, in Jewish gematria with the abbreviation, it sums to 1222. Again, yesterday, the 222nd day of the year. Order out of chaos, reverse alphabetic order summing to 222. And there was some order out of chaos in Canada, too, and we'll talk about that in the Fredericton shooting in 2 more stories. So again, this date, August 10th of the crash, 8:10. Now, as I've been exposing on this podcast for many months now, these false flag events, these staged rituals, are often lined up with the dates that local politicians took office, and that's the case here as well. The day before this crash, the governor of Washington, Jay Inslee, turned 810 months old, just like the date 8/10. But exactly, if you just measure the days, since he took office, it's been 2,032 days since January 16th, 2013. Using the standard alphabetic order, Seattle-Tacoma Airport sums to 232. Again, the governor in office for 2,032 days. So his birth date, the governor, February 9th, 2/9, 2,132 days is also 290 weeks, like 2/9. Not only that, but it's been 29 weeks since the anniversary that he took office. The date of this crash had a life lesson number of 29. The age of the man who hijacked the plane and crashed it was 29. The island he crashed the plane onto was Keytron Island. In reduction, Keytron equals 29. And I noticed they put on the Horizon Air CEO on CNN, and they talked to her a little bit. This is her, Constance von Mühlen. Gotta love this name, right? Constance von Mühlen. And using the reverse alphabetic order, her name sums to 290. And again, this guy in office for 290 weeks. This 290 is a special number. The synagogue of Satan equals 290. And actually, the synagogue of Satan sums to the same number in all 4 base methods as Constance von Mühlen. No matter what cipher you look at in the base 4, it's the same. Now, in the English Kabbalah, Constance von Mühlen sums to 255. This is a cipher introduced by Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s. Very significant to the language, but one I try to stay away from since I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. But, these numbers are all over the place. So, in the Kabbalah, her name sums to 255, and this ties us to the mayor. The mayor, Jenny Durkin, has been in office for 255 days. Now, what's interesting is that in English Extended, so these 2 ciphers that you're looking at now, if you're watching the live stream, English Extended and Jewish, these ciphers actually more closely mirror Hebrew and Greek Gematria charts, 1 through 9, 10 through 90, and 100 through 900. They're stacked ciphers, or amplified, as I like to call them, and these ciphers produce very large numbers. So in this method, Constance von Meulen has an English gematria of 1,420. And in Jewish gematria, the name Jenny Durkin equals 1,420. And I believe this name is made up, constructed to kind of go alongside with the mayor. This plane crash occurred in Puget Sound, which sums to 142 ordinal. The name of the island, Keytron Island, also 142. This all being a tribute, of course, to Gematria, summing to 142 as well. And now, the date that I'm talking about this story, the date when it's national headline news in the morning, August 11th is the date that leaves 142 days in the year. So this is what I'm talking about. You know, it's not just one number you see, but I'm hoping to explain why each of these numbers individually is being attributed. It's all about the language of Gematria. So the crash itself happened on the date leaving 143 days in the year. Well, would you believe that both Constance von Meulen has Gematria of 143, like in Jewish Gematria 1430? The name Jenny Durkin equals 143 in the Kabbalah. This is a number of masonry. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry equals 143. And this name, Constance von Meulen, you know, it has other numbers that match the accepted rite. In reduction, ancient accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry equals 187. Constance von Meulen equals 1807 trigonal. And her name in ordinal equals 223, like the word Masonic in Jewish. And of course, today, the date that this news is in the headlines, the 223rd day of the year. Finally, I mentioned how this plane crashed into Keytron Island. Keytron equals 83, alphabetic order. SeaTac Airport equals 830 in Gematria, and it's been 8 months and 30 days since Washington's date of statehood. So I'm finding that the date of statehood, in addition to these politicians' office, the dates they took office and all this stuff, also seem to be tied in. And not only that, but it's been 83 days since the mayor's birthday. So I know that's a lot to take in to start off this podcast, but these news stories, you know, you just simply type in the names of the people involved, and I'm sure when the name of this guy is released, it'll tie into all of these same numbers that I just talked about. But to me, really, this 56, you know, this is the real riddle right here. Date with 56 numerology, plane crash summing to 56, mechanic 56, and all these other phrases as well. So we're going to jump from that over to the topic of Alex Jones being deplatformed from all these various internet sites. YouTube, Apple took him offline. I forget what other ones there are, but InfoWars, of course, still alive. But this comes around the same time that we're seeing ISPs starting to slow down traffic to other websites that are being censored or unapproved. And we can talk about this later, but what I want to mention is how Alex Jones, you know, despite the fact that I support at least his message and the fact that he's trying to speak truth and, you know, has no concern for what others are thinking of him, he's been, you know, he's definitely some sort of agent, and he's coded this way as well. And you see this in Gematria, you know, his birth date, February 11th, the 42nd day of the year. InfoWars equals 42 reduction. Alex Jones equals 42 single reduction. Alex Jones also has this 1111 Gematria in Jewish. This is, of course, the wake-up number. And this is all, you know, part of how it's done. InfoWars also summing to 105, alphabetic order, just like Alex Jones. So this guy's coded by the numbers to the teeth, so you know that he's some kind of plant. Well, you know, with him being censored from all these sites, this has been done by the numbers. So I'm actually just going to open up Zach's post because he did a really good flow on this topic. August 6th, right? This is the date that they took him off of all these websites this past Monday. August 6th is the 218th day of the year. The phrase conspiracy theory sums to 218 in the reverse alphabetic order. This date also leaves 147 days in the year, the word conspiracy summing to 147 in the same method. And of course, the date 86, being 86th from the internet, 86 the term for throwing away or kicking out. The name Alexander Jones, alphabetic order, also has this 147 gematria. Freemason sums to 147 reverse ordinal. And this stands out because of Facebook. Freemasonry summing to 158 in the reverse order. This is the same as Facebook, 158. Facebook in ordinal equals 58, just like Freemasonry in reduction. And think about Mark Zuckerberg, the supposed creator of Facebook. More like the figurehead, but that's a topic for another day. The name Mark Zuckerberg, using the reverse alphabetic order, when reduced, sums to 84, and he was born in the year 84. The word masonry has gematria of 84, again in reverse, just like Zionism. August 6th, the date that Alex Jones is getting kicked off of his website, is 84 days after Zuckerberg's birthday. And it's interesting, too, the name Alexander, 84 ordinal. He's based out of Austin, Texas. Austin sums to 84. And this is all about banning fake news from the internet. Fake news equals 84. As I'm exposing in this podcast, it's the mainstream news that's delivering us fake news on a daily basis. And the reason they're attacking all these other fake news platforms is because they want a monopoly on fake news. They basically want to be the only voice, and that's why they're starting to censor voices that don't agree with their narratives. And this is what they're talking about. You don't agree with their story, you're banned. No one even gets to hear you. Whereas in a true society, people who talk crazy and are incorrect can be proven wrong, and we as a society can then judge that person. But there's no proof that the kids at Sandy Hook died. There is a lot of good evidence that some of those kids were singing at the Super Bowl just a few months later. So again, Alex Jones, 86 from Facebook on 8/6, on a perfect date for conspiracy theory and fake news. And this is how they do it, constructing everything by the numbers. So now, if you saw my podcast last week, you saw that there was this ongoing beast riddle. And this all began when Apple they reached 100... Let me slow down here, Truth Seeker. Apple Inc. reached $1 trillion on the stock market. Apple Inc. in gematria sums to 198, the same as beast. In the alphabetic order, beast equals 47. Now, on the date that they made this announcement, Apple turned exactly 2,209 weeks old, and that's 47 squared. On the same date they made this announcement, Kane, who's been known as the Demon or the Beast in WWE, became mayor of Knox County in Tennessee. So that was part of this whole riddle. Well, this is all continuing throughout the week, and here we see it again in this Fredericton, Canada shooting up in New Brunswick. So we're going to talk about how this ritual was constructed by the number 666. And first, just check out the gematria that CNN gave us in their headline. We'll see if it's the same. Yep, using the alphabetic order, the headline that CNN gave us sums to 666. Of course, 666 is the number of the beast. In the reverse alphabetic order, notice how we get a 966. And 9 is just an upside down 6, right? So 666, this is the number of the beast, and it's revealed in Revelation. In Jewish gematria, Revelation sums to 1010. And again, this shooting was in Canada, so we're going to measure to the politicians' dates, the date they took office and their birthdays. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took office on November 4th, 2015. August 10th was exactly 1010 days after that date, just like the gematria of Revelation. Now, the verse in Revelation that reveals the number of the beast is 13:18, right? Revelation 13:18. Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, in Satanic Gematria, equals 1318. And this is significant. This Satanic Gematria cipher, very relevant to this study. The Bible is 66 books long, Revelation the 66th book. 66 books equals 666 in Satanic Gematria, which also sums to 666. So we're talking about 666. Number of the beast equals 66 in reduction gematria. It's the number of a man, which equals 66 reverse reduction. Now, if you look at the coordinates of Fredericton, you'll notice it's located on the 66th meridian. Again, Revelation, the 66th book. And check out the gematria of this place. Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada sums to 2211 extended. And 2211 is the 66th triangular number. You add every number up 1 through 66, it equals 2211. So as I mentioned before, beast equals 198 in Jewish gematria. Well, the lieutenant governor of New Brunswick, Jocelyn Roy Venot, had been in office for 198 weeks before this shooting. So Justin Trudeau, 1,010 days since he took office, just like Revelation. You write out beast in that same cipher, and you get the number of weeks that the lieutenant governor was in office. And this is obviously all a ritual to 666, as CNN helped clue us in with the headline. So I want to mention the number 173. Zenith of the Alpha did some good work on this number. It comes from the Bible, where while Jesus is getting crucified in the Gospels, he yells out Eli for God. That's another name for God. Eli is the number 173 upside down, and it's part of this crucifixion code. And again, Justin Trudeau, if you measure to his date of birth from the date of the shooting, you find it's 17,030 days old. And speaking of the crucifixion code, crucifixion of Jesus Christ summing to 303. He was crucified at age 33. Well, Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada equals 303 in the same ordinal method. I also want to point out that this comes 19 days after the shooting in Toronto. The word chaos equals 19. Toronto has this ordinal value of 117. That's the same as Fredericton, 117. In fact, you tack on New Brunswick after it, and it sums to 117 in reduction. And this 117, this is significant. It's the gematria of 13, which is one of our ritual codes. And this shooting a span of 41 days after Canada Day. That's the 13th prime number. So again, there's a lot going on here, but it's pretty obvious. This place, which sums to the 66th triangular number on the 66th meridian, all about the number of the beast, 666. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about this ambush in Camden, New Jersey, in which 2 police detectives were shot. So first of all, let's look at the date numerology. Just like we started off the first story from Seattle Airport, the date of the shooting was August 7th. 8 plus 7 plus 18 equals 33. And in reduction gematria, police equals 33. This is a story about 2 police officers being shot. Remember, the highest degree of masonry is the 33rd. Masonry sums to 33. The date, meanwhile, had full numerology of 53. 8 plus 7 plus 20 plus 18. The word shooting has gematria of 53 in single reduction. And this is a story about 2 detectives being shot. 2 detectives equals 53. Now, the 53rd prime number is 241. And this news story comes to us from Camden, New Jersey. And look at that. Using the reverse alphabetic order, it equals 241. The date of this ambush attack occurred exactly 19 weeks after New Jersey's date of statehood. So again, we mentioned that in the story about Washington. Also talking about that now for this news story coming at us out of New Jersey. The word ambush equals 19 in reduction. And again, this is a number of chaos, 19 in the same method. And there was an interesting detail in this story. Not only did this police shooting occur seemingly randomly, these 2 detectives just sitting in their car, but they said it also occurred during National Night Out, which is intended to acquaint the police with the community members. And in reverse ordinal, National Night Out equals 232. And it just so happens this is 232 days after their date of statehood. Doesn't seem like a coincidence when you see this happening every time from story to story. As far as the governor of New Jersey, the date of the shooting was the 146th day of the year. The name Phil Murphy equals 146. He had been in office for 203 days. And again, the date 7th of August equals 203 in gematria. In reduction, 7th of August equals 77. The mayor of Camden, New Jersey, Frank Moran, had been in office for 7 months and 7 days. It was also his 220th day in office. And the name Frank Moran, with capital letters taken into account, a cipher we call Frank Baconis, his name sums to 220. So that's not really the typical riddle we see, but nevertheless, there's always some sort of alignment with the politicians and the dates on the calendar. The next shooting we're going to look at appears to be part of this whole race-baiting propaganda. This is a story about a white police officer killing a black man in Nashville, Tennessee. So once again, we start with the date numerology of the shooting. Here we look at the life lesson number, 7 plus 26 plus 2 plus 1 plus 8. This sums to 44. In reduction gematria, shooting equals 44. This is the same as the word kill. This was a black man killed by a white officer. The word officer equals 44 in reduction. In this cipher called septenary gematria, which is acknowledged by many YouTubers, not just myself, this is a method that goes up from 1 to 7 and back down to 1 again, and then repeats itself to end the alphabet. In this method, African American sums to 44. The name of this African American in this story is Daniel Hambrick. His name also 44. So this date also had 33 numerology, which we've become pretty familiar with. The date 7 plus 26 plus 1 plus 8 also had 42 numerology. And this is a number we also see stamped into racial propaganda all the time. The N-word sums to 42 in reduction. Think about Jackie Robinson wearing number 42. The name Jackie summing to 42, reverse reduction. So this shooting occurred in Nashville. The mayor of Nashville is David Briley. He was sworn into office 4 months and 20 days before this shooting. Again, the shooting on a date with 42 numerology, like the Gematria of Nigger. Briley's first day as mayor, by the way, March 6th, was the 65th day of the year. The name Daniel Hambrick equals 65 in reduction, and Hambrick equals 65 in ordinal. So if you just get one of those matches, I probably wouldn't have mentioned it, but with his name having that double gematria of 65, it just seems so relevant. You know, it's just alluding to the fact that this name was created and this whole event was created in relation to the date that the mayor took office. They're all tributes to one another. All these people in this Masonic organization at the top, you know, paying tribute to one another. Now, if you look at the governor of Tennessee, I found it was interesting. It was 90 months and 11 days since he took office. But it was also 11 months and 3 days after his birthday. And 113. That's the number of dishonesty, as we call it, you know. Perjury sums to 113, dishonest 113, not true 113. As far as Tennessee, the date of statehood, right? Well, Tennessee was 222 years old. It turned that in June of this past summer. The name Daniel Hambrick equals 222 in Jewish gematria. And the date of this news story, when the footage of the shooting was released, was 22 weeks and 22 days. I'm sorry, 22 weeks and 2 days after the mayor took office. Also interesting that Daniel Hambrick summing to 308. Hambrick equals 38. Tennessee equals 380, and, you know, this is a number of death. Death summing to 38, alphabetic order. There's more allusions to the crucifixion code. You know, I was just talking about the number 173 and how this number seems to be attributed very often. Well, isn't it interesting that Tennessee equals 1703 reverse extended, and in standard extended, Hambrick equals 173. We got some news out of Italy this past week, specifically the town of Bologna, Italy. And once again, date numerology, gematria. There's always going to be some sort of alignment here. And in this case, we got the full numerology of the date, 8 plus 6 plus 20 plus 18 as 52. In English reduction, Bologna, Italy equals 42. I wonder if it's really bologna, right? I've been eating bologna my whole life as a kid, but I'm thinking it's probably like Bologna. So This is not my specialty, pronouncing cities. So we're just gonna go with Bologna right now. In 52, by the way, the word death has double gematria of 52, with all exceptions and in our KFW cipher. So this is a special number for a ritual where there's real death, which, judging by the size of this explosion, there certainly appears to be the case. Certainly seems to be possible. Bologna, Italy, in reverse reduction equals 65, and the date of this crash was 65 days after Italy's Republic Day. And, these dates, when I talk about Republic Day, that's kind of equivalent to Independence Day in most nations. So it seems as if international news stories hit the presses in relation to that nation's Independence Day. And I think there's kind of an alignment like that, with 9/11, for instance. Yeah, like I talked about how 9/11 was a giant eclipse ritual. The word eclipse equals 69, 9/11, and July 4th are 69 days apart on the calendar. Anyway, so the date of this crash, they said that there was a gas tanker explosion on an Italian highway. And the reason this stands out is because August 6th is the date that leaves 147 days in the year. Again, 147 is our number for conspiracy in reverse. But also in reverse, gas tanker equals 147. And in ordinal, Italian highway, summing to 147. I also found it interesting that they're saying 67 people were injured. The word Italy equals 67 in the alphabetic order. 67 is also a number we see stamped into these often because blood sacrifice and human sacrifice both sum to 67. Well, the 19th prime number is 67. And now we're going to talk about the mayor of Bologna, Italy. Virginio Merola sums to 1090 in Jewish gematria. Again, syncing up with 67. In the reverse order, well, first of all, in reduction, Virginio Merola equals 86. And the date of this big explosion in his city is on August 6th, 8/6. Or was it? Yeah, August 6th. The phrase blood sacrifice equals 86 and human sacrifice also 86. In Jewish gematria, tanker explosion equals 860. And measuring from the date the mayor took office, it's been 86 months. So I probably should have let off with that. That's pretty massive, right? Now this date, August 6th, is written 8/6 in the United States, but in Italy, it's written 6/8. Measuring to the mayor's birthday, it's 6 months and 8 days. We also have the president of Italy, Sergio Mattarella, who sums to 68 in reduction. Now, he's been in office for 3 years, 6 months, and 3 days. This crash happened at Bologna Casalecchio, which sums to 363 in Jewish gematria. There's a lot more to this that I'm not going to go over on this podcast for the sake of brevity. The headline of this article, for instance, the article read, 3 dead in Bologna highway, gas tanker explosion. And in Jewish Gematria, this sums to 2722. Gas explosion equals 722. And there's a couple more alignments that I found pretty interesting there. All right, this next story is kind of interesting. I kept the number on the screen again. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so we got this news story about an assistant coach at Wake Forest University. And allegedly the incident was this, right? This guy, not the coach, but some other guy, was banging on cars outside of a hotel looking for a ride. And this coach gets up out of his car, punches the guy, knocks him out. His head hits the pavement. He dies 2 days later. So, pretty strange story, right? How could a basketball coach with a good job and a decent salary do something so violent and kill a guy? Now, they never mentioned race was an incident, was part of this incident, but, you can certainly see how that might be the case. Well, here I'm going to talk to you about how this story was crafted by the numbers. So Wake Forest University, the school this guy works for, it was established on February 3rd, 1834. Meaning the date of this incident, Wake Forest was in its 184th day of being 184 years old. The word kill equals 184 in Satanic Gematria. The name of this victim, notice how kill equals 44 ordinal and 64 reverse ordinal. The name of this victim is Sandor Szabo, which sums to 44 reduction and 64 reverse reduction. This guy was a tourist from Boca Raton, Florida, which also sums to 44 and 64. Now, in the reverse order, Sandor Szabo sums to 163, 163 being the 38th prime number. And again, 38, a number of death. Killing equals 38, reduction. Murder sums to 38, reverse reduction. And again, this guy's home state was Florida, 38. This number also got a tribute in the headline. Wake Forest assistant basketball coach charged with assault in deadly NYC attack. Sums to 308 single reduction. So 2 stories ago, we talked about the shooting in Nashville and how the number 42 was a tribute there. It happened on a date with 42 numerology, 4 months, 20 days after the mayor took office. Well, this incident took place in NYC. NYC equals 42 in the alphabetic order. The name of the coach is Jamil Jones. Jamil equals 42, reverse reduction. He's the coach of Wake Forest. Wake Forest equals 42 in reduction. Now, when I was researching this story, I found this out. There was a wrestler named Sandor Szabo. A pro wrestler. Look at this. So the character in this story who died named Sandor Szabo. And it just so happens there was a Hungarian pro wrestler named Sandor Szabo who has his own Wikipedia page. And measuring from the anniversary of his death to the date of this incident was a span of exactly 42 weeks. It's really amazing how they line these up. So the number 42, when you write it out, sums to 142 in the alphabetic order. And notice how both of these men were 35 years old. 35 also sums to 142 in ordinal. Speaking of 35, Boca Raton equals 35. That's where the victim is from. Now, another thing I noticed that was funny is that they also spelled his name Sabor Zabo instead of Sandor, as I noticed. And the name Sabor Zabo sums to 37 and 118. And the reason this is interesting is because this Sandor Zabo, the Hungarian, has foreign characters in his name. Notice how there's an accent over the A and O. And if you don't count these, his name sums to 37 and 118. So isn't it interesting? We got two different spellings of this guy's name, and one of them matches the actual wrestler, Sandor Zabo. The date of this story, by the way, the date that it made headline news, was August 10th, the 222nd day of the year. The wrestler Sandor Zabo died at 22,200 days old. 222. There's a few more interesting things. I noticed the number that they put on the dashboard when he's sitting in this car here was relevant. Also, when you add up the name of the perpetrator and the victim, you'll find they sum to the same as murder in a couple ciphers. And, really interesting stuff. I find that when you add these names together, you very, very often find very significant numbers. But before we go into break, I want to talk about two stories, and I'm only going to touch on these briefly. And the reason being, I have two videos up, about 20 minutes each, on each of these stories on my YouTube channel from earlier in the week. So if you want more on this, go ahead and check my channel out and look at those videos. But this one was really obvious, right? This story came out of Madison, Wisconsin, my home state. And supposedly the story goes that in the middle of the night, someone entered this radio station and fired through the glass at 3 DJs who were broadcasting on the station. Only one of the guys was hit. He was shot in the buttocks, they said. He was released later that day. Of course, he was shot in the ass. Now, I want to tell you how this story was crafted by the numbers. And the first thing I noticed about this radio station is their logo, right? And as it appears on the building, WORT broadcasts out of 89.9 FM. And the way their logo puts these nines, they look almost the same as eights. The loop on that 9 goes all the way up. So it looks like 888 FM, doesn't it? Now, on the date of the shooting, the state of Wisconsin, where this occurred, turned exactly 8,880 weeks old. And in the language of Gematria, radio station shooting equals 888 in Jewish. So isn't that interesting? A station whose logo looks like 888, on the date the state turns 8,880 weeks old, with a radio station shooting equals 888. 888, by the way, is also the Jewish gematria of 3.14, which brings us to pi, the mathematics of the circle. Of course, the number 8 made up of 2 circles. And this brings us to pi, which is 22 divided by 7, 3.14. In gematria, 22 divided by 7 equals 314. Well, on the date of the shooting, the radio station turned exactly 2,227 weeks old. So again, for more on that, please check the video out. I also put up a video on this drone attack, right, where this drone supposedly flew over this crowd, and then it just exploded, right? They called this an assassination attempt, but really it was all a hoax. And I do want to point out, by the way, that Jurassic Liars commented on my video. His comment doesn't show up under my video because his channel is very heavily censored on YouTube. He predicted that Trump would be assassinated on 8/4, and I do find it interesting that, of course, he was wrong about that, but How interesting is it that we got an attempted assassination of a leader of state on that same date? So, there's something to this whole code. There's something that we're picking up on. It's just a matter of figuring it out a little more clearer. And I think with Gematria, we would have had a better idea if we had a better database and better investigation here on how this all works. So the date of this attack was August 4th. August 4th, written 8/4. The group that claimed responsibility was called Soldiers in T-Shirts, which sums to 84. Remember, Masonry equals 84. Also, Jesuit equals 84. This is incredibly important to this. We'll touch on that. August 4th is the 216th day of the year. And 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. Now, in Sumerian Gematria, which multiplies the alphabetic order by 6, Venezuela equals 666, and it was the head of state in Venezuela on which the assassination was attempted. So speaking of 666 and how it connects to the 216th day of the year, August 4th, it's interesting to me that 4th of August equals 1098 in Jewish Gematria. The name of the president, Nicolas Maduro Moros, equals 1098, just like the date of this attempted assassination. Remember, beast equals 198. Something interesting about Venezuela, right? Look at the Gematria of the Society of Jesus. And when the Society of Jesus was established as the Jesuit order back in 1540, this Jewish cipher was most significant. English was not in its current form, so Latin Gematria, very, very important. So in this method, the Society of Jesus equals 1811. And Venezuela adopted its independence in the year 1811. Now check this out. In ordinal and reverse, the Society of Jesus equals 224 and 235. The name of the president, Nicolas Maduro Moros, with the foreign character omitted, equals 224 and 235. And again, this is all connected to the beast riddle. Think about how the Jesuit order's motto is, "For the greater glory of God." This sums to 1201 in Jewish, which is the same as the synagogue of Satan. 1201. The synagogue of Satan, first mentioned in Revelation 2:9. In the reverse order, the synagogue of Satan equals 290. And think about Society of Jesus, SJ, S the 19th letter, J the 10th, sums to 29. So please check out my video for more on this and how this is all a tribute to the Jesuit order and geometry. Of course, Gematria is geometry within the language. Using the alphabetic order, Venezuela sums to 111. This drone attack occurred 111 days before the president's birthday. The word drone equals 56. Drone also equals 29, like SJ. Society of Jesus sums to 56. So again, there's a lot more to this. I mean, it even ties into the dates of Colombian officials. This attempted assassination attempt. Fortunately, we're going into break here, folks. We'll do that in a second. But yeah, this all had to do with the number 108, and both of these Colombian officials, one of them born on August 1st, 8-1, another one born on the 10th of August, 10-8. So that's what's going on, guys. All right. All right, we'll go on break for a couple minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Saturncast number 21. Today is Saturday, August 11th, 2018. I know there's a lot of people out there who are actually celebrating the real birthday of Jesus. This is one of those dates that a lot of people really believe was the birth date of the real Jesus Christ. I feel neutral on all that because a lot of people tell me a lot of different dates, so I'll just keep giving gifts to people on Christmas for now. We're going to talk about kind of a silly news story. I don't even really want to talk too much about this because it's so stupid, but we got a story about a woman who gave birth at a Burger King, and that's not the wildest part of the story. It was while she was overdosing on heroin. And I don't believe this is a real story. I believe this is just something manufactured by the numbers to keep people in a low vibrational state, make them think that other people are just so god-awful horrible, the world's a terrible place, you know, what kind of sick people are out there. There's some pretty sick people out there, but I don't know if they're quite this sick. I guess we'll see. So anyway, this Burger King was in the town of Chillicothe, Ohio. And notice how Burger King and Chillicothe both sum to 58 and 59 in reduction. These are the same two numbers as Freemasonry in these same methods. And even in the reverse order, Burger King and Freemasonry both sum to 158. So, call me crazy, but when you write out Whopper, it sums to 101. Burger King, the home of the Whopper. 101 is the 26th prime number, and both the characters in this story, Elizabeth Sanders and Zachary Frey, are 26 years old, right? Now, the name that they gave us for the woman who was found in the stall, her name was Elizabeth D. Sanders. In ordinal, this sums to 172. And she's the woman who had a heroin overdose while giving birth. Heroin overdose sums to 172. In reverse, giving birth equals 172. So you're telling me she's got the same gematria as both those terms, really? I want to point out the quote they gave us sums to 1225. This is a Freemasonry number. Freemasonry equals 1225. Even reverse satanic Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 1225. So this is one of those numbers you see attributed often. There's more clues that this is a lie. I mean, the headlines got it stamped all over it. I'll just let you check out the post, guys. Next, I want to talk about the vandalism of Donald Trump's star on the Walk of Fame. And this happened back on July 25th, right? But I didn't hear about it until this past week. And I find it interesting that it occurred on the date it did. July 25th, written 25/7. Using the reverse alphabetic order, Hollywood Boulevard equals 257, right? So a story on Hollywood Boulevard on the date that matches the Gematria. But this is about a man destroying a star. And check this out. Using the alphabetic order, star equals 58. And in Jewish Gematria, the word star equals 51. And check out, 271. And check out how 271 is the 58th prime number. So the word star has this close connection to the number 58. The name of the man accused in this story, his name is Austin Michael Clay. And what do you know? His name equals 58 in reduction. His name also has more ties to Masonry. Remember, Freemasonry equals 58. His name also equals 1487, trigonal. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 1487 Jewish. In prime numbers, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 1050. Austin Michael Clay, 1050 in Sumerian. And how about this, too? Austin Michael Clay equals 700 in Satanic. The name Trump equals 700 extended. And it's Donald Trump's star that he smashed. His full name also equals 230 reverse. The name Donald equals 23 in reduction. They also gave us his hometown of Glendale, California, which is funny because Donald J. Trump equals 148, same as Glendale, California, 148. The name Donald John Trump equals 185. And this story of his star being destroyed, that happened 18 months and 5 days after he took office. And perhaps coincidentally, Star Destroyer equals 1085, 185. That was the first phrase I thought of when I saw this story, was Star Destroyer. Tells you a lot about what movies I watched growing up. Something else interesting about the word star, right? We talked about the 58 Gematria and how this ties into the guy's name. In reduction, the word star equals 13. The 13th prime number is 41. This happened 41 days after Trump's birthday. When you write out 13, it equals 347. The name of the culprit, Austin Michael Clay, equals 347. And isn't it interesting, too? In prime numbers, his name sums to a prime number, 563, which is the 103rd prime number. 103, you drop the 0, another 13. And now news of the accusation, this published on August 7th, which is 13 days after the star was destroyed. Oops. So next up, we're going to talk about the untimely death of a male. I guess he was a model, which confuses me, but his name was Zombie Boy. This guy was named Rick Genest, and he passed away last week on August 1st. So this man died 6 days before his 33rd birthday. 33. This is a number of sacrifice, as I point out commonly, and this is heavily supported in Gematria. Remember, this is all about the crucifixion code, Jesus dying at age 33 in the year 33, supposedly. So, the reason this stands out in this case, in Jewish Gematria, 33 equals 148. This is the same as ritual sacrifice, 148. Well, in full Jewish Gematria, the name Zombie Boy equals 1048. And this guy dying within a week of his 33rd birthday. There's something called Chaldean numerology. The name Rick Genest equals 33 in that method. Now, what I found interesting about this story, I didn't make a post about it until it made the news because of Lady Gaga. She was supposedly stirring up controversy because she made the point that he probably killed himself before news of that came out. Well, the reason Lady Gaga commented is because this guy was in one of her music videos. It was the video for Born This Way. And notice how Born This Way has the same 154 gematria as ritual sacrifice. And I noticed that Lady Gaga, if you measure from her birthday to Rick Genest's birthday, it's a span of 33 weeks and 3 days. Also, this is 7 months and 21 days. And on the date of his death, he was 1,721 weeks old exactly. But again, this appears to be part of this ongoing beast riddle as well. The name Rick Genest equals 666. In regards to him dying just before the age of 33, notice how 666 and triple sixes both sum to 156, which is the same as 33. I've been mentioning this 173 number. Jesus cried out for Eli on the cross, which is 173 upside down. And Zombie Boy also has this 1073 gematria. In regards to this possibly being an eclipse sacrifice, using the alphabetic order, Rick Genest equals 111, right? His nickname Zombie Boy equals 112. He died between 11 months and 1 week and 11 months 2 weeks after the eclipse. And in Gematria, Rick Zombie Boy Genest equals 290, which is the same as eclipse sacrifice. So I feel like I'm picking up on something here in regards to the riddle. Because again, it's all in the crucifixion code. He died on the 213th day of the year. Crucifixion of Jesus Christ, 2130. And again, it's believed that Jesus was crucified under an eclipse. So on the date of his death, Lady Gaga was exactly 18 weeks after her birthday. This was on the date August 1st, which can be written 1/8. It also had date numerology of 18. Remember, crucifixion of Jesus Christ equals 1818. Wow. There's a lot more to the crucifixion code. I invite you to check the post out. What's weird, what's going to actually take us into this next story is that on the date of this music video, remember I said he was in this Born This Way video? Born This Way equals the same as ritual sacrifice. Well, ritual human sacrifice equals 211. And the date that this video was released was 2/11/2011, right? And on the date of this video release, Rick Genest was 1,331 weeks old. And 1331 is a super significant number. As I explained, this is the number that represents a solar eclipse. Recently, we had the death of this woman, Samantha Eastwood. Her body was just discovered this past week. Her name in English Extended equals this 1331 number. Now, it's funny because I just did a post a couple weeks ago mentioning how on the date of the lunar eclipse, there was a music festival in Belgium, and it was a group of 2 DJs. They used to be a group of 3 DJs. The DJ who left the group on the date of the lunar eclipse was 13,031 days old. Again, this is the number that represents a solar eclipse. So on the date of a lunar eclipse, this guy disappeared, right? Well, Samantha Eastwood, whose name sums to 1331, disappeared on July 27th, the date of the lunar eclipse. So, not to pat myself on the back, but I mean, you know, I'm getting a lot of help from people out there, but there's definitely something to this number and the riddles that come along with it. They're calling this woman a midwife. The word midwife, summing to 69 and 120, which is the same as eclipse. Eclipse, 69 and 120. So in Hebrew Gematria, the word for total eclipse and solar eclipse, these both sum to 83, right? The word murder equals 83 in reverse. Well, the 83rd prime number is 431. And the man who's accused of murder in this story, his name is Michael Sterling, which sums to 431, the 83rd prime number. The gematria of his hometown, Grattan Road, Bucknell, is pretty interesting. You get this 304 in reverse, 115 reverse reduction. The word murder sums to 34. The word killing has double gematria of 115 in reverse and Jewish. You also get a 74, like the gematria of killing, 74. In the reverse order, midwife Samantha Eastwood equals the 74th prime number, 373. So her body was found earlier in the week. We didn't get the article in the news until 4 days later, which was the 220th day of the year. And think about 22, the master builder number. Master builder number sums to 220. Well, the 22nd triangular number is 253. You add every number up, 1 through 22. You get the value of 253. The name Samantha Eastwood in the reverse alphabetic order equals 253. And then in the headline, Samantha Eastwood death. Midwife found in shallow grave. That sums to 253 reverse reduction. Midwife Samantha Eastwood, by the way. This also sums to 130 reverse reduction. This is kind of a soft hoax code, the number 13. In that same method, Samantha Eastwood equals the 13th triangular number, 91. And 13 squared is 169. Caver's Wall, where her body was found, sums to 1,069. Caver's Wall, Staffordshire, equals 1,069 in satanic. And notice how Caver's Wall also has this 154, that ritual sacrifice number I keep mentioning. So there's definitely more to that. I invite you to check the post out once again on my blog at gematrinator.com/blog. Real quickly, I want to talk about the death of Margaret Heckler. This woman was most famously known for being the former United States ambassador to Ireland. And as old as she was when she died, 87 years old, looks like an eclipse sacrifice. This woman may not have died naturally. Using the alphabetic order, the name Margaret Heckler equals 145. On the date of her death, she was 1,045 months old. I believe her death was related to the Great American Solar Eclipse. On the date of that eclipse, August 21st, 2017, she was exactly 1,034 months old. The phrase solar eclipse equals 134 ordinal. The phrase eclipse sacrifice equals 142. And her official job was United States ambassador to Ireland, which sums to 1402 in Jewish Gematria. I also found it pretty interesting that her full name, Margaret Mary Heckler, this sums to 202 ordinal, which is the same as total solar eclipse, 202. And if you look at her term in office as ambassador to Ireland, she lasted 3 years, 202 days. 202, also a number of ritual human sacrifice in Jewish Gematria. Now, if you measure from that great American eclipse to the date of her death, it was exactly 350 days. The name Heckler equals 35 reduction. In reduction, the name Margaret Heckler, her full name sums to 73. And of course, this is a number of sacrifice, 73. In reduction, sacrifice equals 46. And if you measure from her birthday to the date of her death, you find it's 46 days. The 46th prime number, 199, right? She died in Arlington, Virginia, which has ordinal gematria of 199. In reverse, Arlington, Virginia equals 260, which is the same as Margaret Heckler, 260. So the name Margaret also sums to 52. She died on a date with full numerology of 52. Also interesting that her last day in office as ambassador was in the year 89. The name Margaret Heckler equals 89. And from the date she left office to the date of her death was 347 months. Think about how the word eclipse equals 69. 347 is the 69th prime number. 347 also the Hebrew gematria of sacrifice. And in the reverse alphabetic order, her name at birth, Margaret Mary O'Shaughnessy, equals 347. All right, so on the topic of deaths, you know, I label that section of my blog Murder by Numbers. And I used to label all my videos on YouTube, anytime someone died, I would call it murder by numbers. Now, I don't really believe that all these people are getting murdered. I think there is some kind of organic code that we're witnessing play out through the numbers. Things are occurring on some sort of frequency beneath this layer of reality, and I think numbers are the way those frequencies manifest themselves. And, I do believe, don't get me wrong, I certainly think that some people really are dying by this code, being murdered, maybe being poisoned and whatnot. It just seems too obvious that that's the case, but a lot of the times I think these people are dying naturally, which could be the case with someone like Margaret Heckler, who was 87 years old. Now, I'm also going to talk about this in relation to a couple of deaths that we got at music festivals recently. So in late June, I attended this Electric Forest Festival, and things went pretty well, except for the fact that one person died, and then there's another person who's still missing, someone who I guess broke up with their girlfriend and ran off into the woods or something. And I did a post on this guy. It appears as if he died by the numbers. And not only that, but consider the fact that this guy who died, his name was Hunter Lurie, a 27-year-old from California, just so happens to be the son of a Hollywood film director. So it kind of makes you wonder about what's going on and why these types of people are dying. But, it's very possible this could be by the numbers or just organically by the numbers. And the reason, I kind of bring this up is that this week we found out what concert he was at when he initially went into cardiac arrest and, before he died 2 days later. And it's just interesting that the name of this guy, the act is Bishop Briggs, and he's got all these numbers of death and killing that we talk about. And, of course, this guy doesn't know, what numbers he has in Gematria. This isn't intentional. But I guess the point I'm making is that, if this guy was really killed or murdered, how did they know he was going to go see this show? Like, did they really plan it out so that they would wait until this point? And how do you even make sure they die at that time or pass out at that moment? It just seems like there's something deeper going on here. That's all I'm saying, because I've been experiencing these deaths in my life by the numbers, undeniably so. The cause of death that we found out Hunter had was a pulmonary embolism. And, it's worth mentioning that I talked about how this event seems to have all this Masonic numerology. And then this is the cause of death, pulmonary embolism 223. That's the same as Masonic 223. Bishop Briggs in secondary Kabbalah also has this 223 Gematria, in addition to the blood sacrifice number, the 44th prime, like kill, 131, like ritual human sacrifice. But as far as this being a pulmonary embolism, look at the Jewish Gematria, 1117. 1117 is really one of the most special numbers in numerology, I believe, in this study. And check out this relation, right? The number 187, this is the number of chapters in the Torah. It's the Gematria of Society of Jesus, ancient accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Well, this is a special number because it's got the same digits in its prime factorization, 11 times 17, and in its prime relation, 1117, right? So pulmonary embolism, the 187th prime number. And the name of the guy who died, Hunter Lurie, equals 1087, 187. And as far as why this is a number of death, we talk about rappers using this as a homicide code. The word death in reverse extended equals 1807. How interesting is that? So I just talk a little bit more about organic numerology and deaths and how I think there's absolutely something going on outside of our five senses that we can see and smell that's causing people to die in our reality. And it just seems to be a harsh consequence of that. So, in speaking of deaths at a festival, I noticed there was another one at this hard summer festival, which I guess was in California this past week or two. And, they reported this guy's name as Andrew Cole in some of the main media outlets. I later noticed that other outlets reported his name as Andrew Cole Click, but several went with Andrew Cole. So, first of all, they told us that 23 people were hospitalized. The word hard equals 23, right? A hard summer festival. But look at this, the name Andrew Cole equaling 46 and 170. That's the same as sacrifice, 170 and 46. Notice he was 19 years old. The 19th prime number is 67. He was from Tracy, California. Tracy sums to 67, just like blood sacrifice, human sacrifice. But also in Jewish gematria, look at this. He's got 1108. This is the same as death, 118. Homicide, 118, in that same method. This music festival was held in Fontana, California. Fontana, 118. One more alignment I noticed. Andrew Cole summing to 53. This is the same as Hard Festival, 53 reduction. And this is held at the Auto Club Speedway, which sums to 2,041. And 241 has this connection to 53, I guess, as well. And I just wanted to point out, too, the headline they gave us sums to 777 in reverse ordinal. Yeah, it's just, you can't really sell me that these people are all getting murdered somehow at the perfect time. I don't necessarily buy it. I just think there's something with this code, and these people who carry these numbers might be, on certain dates, they may be in more danger than others. I don't know. All right, a couple more stories here to go before we wrap this podcast up. I just wanted to mention the Google Doodle we got this week of Mary G. Ross. They were celebrating her 110th birthday. Now, in numerology, 110 represents the number 11. Now, the 11th Fibonacci number is 89, and her birthday was on 8/9, August 9th. So the name Mary Ross in Gematria equals 821. Notice how she died 8 months, 21 days after her 99th birthday. And I find this really interesting, right? Because we just recently had the first coast-to-coast total eclipse in America in 99 years. And it was on the date 8/21. This woman died aged 99, 8 months, 21 days after her birthday. So this is pretty interesting, right? Consider also that Mary Golda Ross, her full name, equals 903, and she died 9 years, 3 months before that 2017 eclipse on 8/21. The word eclipse equals 33. She died actually 3 weeks, 3 days after this date, right? But she also died 3 months, 3 days before the next total solar eclipse. And think about the date of her death. April 29th, 4 plus 29 equals 33. Now, instead, if you measure to the most recent total solar eclipse before she died, you find she died exactly 25 months after. The dates of both her birth and death have 25 numerology. The word death equals 25 in reverse reduction. Also significant, she was born on the 222nd day of a leap year, died on the 120th day of a leap year. The word eclipse equals 222 extended and 120 reverse. I also found some really interesting things about her hometown, Park Hill, Oklahoma. She was born on August 9th, again, 8/9. Park Hill, Oklahoma equals 89. In ordinal, Park Hill, Oklahoma equals 163, the 38th prime number. The name Mary Ross equals 38. So there's a little bit more to this as far as it being related to total eclipse and the Hebrew Gematria of total eclipse. I noticed engineer Mary Ross has triple Gematria of 227, right? And total eclipse equals 227 in Hebrew. Just kind of interesting. Also, engineer Mary Ross 88. 88, that number that represents the infinite loop of time. All right. Now, we're going to go into a little history by the numbers here to wrap this podcast up. And I am going to talk about the organic matrix in the end here. But first, this story about Hell Crafts. And why do I bring it up this week, right? Well, of course, this week, Alex Jones is being shut down because he's questioning the events of Sandy Hook, which, of course, was an absolute hoax. Sandy Hook occurred in this creepy village of Newtown, Connecticut. And Newtown is infamous for having this facility in which psychological experiments used to be conducted, a facility that's still standing to this day. Well, back in the year 1986, we got a big news story out of Newtown, Connecticut, and it was the murder of Hell Crafts. And what I noticed was interesting about this is that it wasn't just a murder case. This murder case set some sort of precedence. It was the first conviction in a murder case in which the victim's body was never found. So this ushered in the ability for the courts to find people guilty even though there was no body. And I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong, but, you know, everything happens for a reason, right? All these things are pushing some sort of agenda, just like the Sandy Hook shooting. So we're going to talk about how this story was crafted by the numbers. In reduction, Newtown, Connecticut sums to 79. This woman named Hell Crafts, and just look at her face. Doesn't she kind of look a little evil, right? Something about that face doesn't sit right with me. It looks like a mask. Anyway, she met her husband and they married in 1979 in Newtown, Connecticut. Again, Newtown, Connecticut, summing to 79. Her full name at birth was Hell Lork Nielsen, which sums to 179. The word murder equals 79, and this is all about a big murder story. But check this out, right? Hell Nielsen and Richard Crafts. When you combine the names in this story, it sums to 777. Again, this story talking about a numeric ritual, which is here to store some sort of order out of chaos. Now, the date of this murder, once again, is the year 86. This was infamously known as the wood chipper murder. And it's funny that wood chipper murder equals 86. Also, 806 in Satanic. Again, blood sacrifice, summing to 86. As does human sacrifice. wood chipper murder also has this 1408, which is the same as ritual sacrifice in Jewish Gematria, a number connecting us back to 33. Now check out the birthday of this woman, right? Can you believe this shit? July 4th, 1947. The date written 7/4/47. These two numbers are very Masonic in nature. The word Masonic equals 74, like her birthday, like Independence Day. Think about how Independence Day sums to 74, just like the date on the calendar 7/4. But these dates are also interesting because the word killing equals 74 with the master number exception. And in the alphabetic order, killing equals 74. Her birth date, 7/4/47. This ritual is all a tribute to Masonry, which has 47 degrees on the Freemasonic compass. This is in tribute to the sun, which travels 47 degrees between the tropics. Now, the 74th prime number is 373. Now, Freemasonry was founded by the numbers of total solar eclipses. This death occurred 373 days after the most recent total solar eclipse. This is also 12 months and 7 days, that eclipse on a date with 127 numerology. Connecticut equals 127 in the English order. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry equals 127, and Connecticut certainly seems to be a hotbed of that activity. Oops. Also notice how Scottish Rite of Freemasonry sums to 325. This is the exact same as Danish flight attendant Hell Crafts, which is what this story is all about. And this phrase even, 32 letters, 5 words. I don't know. All right, so to move this forward, she died a span of 139 days after her birthday. The word Freemasonry, 139. This is also the 34th prime number. Murder equals 34. Her husband's name was Richard Crafts, which equals 223, just like Masonic. So all the clues are there to what this really is. The name Hell Crafts has reduction gematria of 46 and 62. That's the name, same as Sacrifice and Connecticut. The name Crafts equals 67. Again, number of sacrifice. Also, total solar eclipse 67. Her birth name equals 120, just like eclipse. And she died 120 days after the anniversary of the most recent solar eclipse. Again, this 67 number that we were talking about, that's the 19th prime number. The name Hell Crafts equals 109. And think about the number 19 in relation to the Metonic cycle. There's 19 years every 235 synodic months. And this Metonic cycle, so significant to time, if you don't know about it, I link to it in many of my posts. Please read up and check that out. So this fits in perfectly, right? Because Hell Crafts equals 109, like the number 19. This story comes out of Newtown, Connecticut, and Newtown equals 2035. Again, 235 synodic months in that Metonic cycle. This means there's 254 sidereal months in the Metonic cycle. This is when you add 19 plus 235. The word time equals 254. So does the word light. And when Hellcrafts died, she was exactly 2,054 weeks old. Not exactly, but within 2,054 weeks old. So my point is, it's clear what they're doing here. It's all tributes to time, dates on the calendar, total solar eclipses, and the dates on which they occur. It's quite undeniable. All right. But to wrap this up, guys, I want to talk about the organic matrix and, how this whole Gematria stuff in the movies kind of creeps me out a little bit, right? So let's go back to the first movie in which most people recognize Gematria being introduced. And there could be others out there that I'm missing, but there's really 4 that come to mind. And mainly 3, but then there's the 4th, I guess, the Matrix, right? Because that kind of ties in. So we're going to look up the movie Pi. The film Pi was released in 1998 when I was 13 years old. And of course, 13, that's the ritual number that's so significant to this. And in the film Pi, this guy meets someone who's studying Hebrew and is a student of Gematria, and they talk about what this guy's looking at, which is, numerology, the Fibonacci sequence, how it actually relates to the code of Gematria. And in fact, the word Gematria sums to 233, which is a Fibonacci number. It's the 13th Fibonacci number. And again, this movie came out when I was 13 years old, right? It's weird. Now, think about the main character of this movie, Sean Gillette. He helped write the film. He starred in the film. He's the main character. In Gematria, Sean Gillette equals 141 and 183 reverse. That's the same as Gematrinator, 141, 183. And this guy in the movie builds basically a freaking Gematrinator, decodes the Torah. And look at his birth date, June 4th, 1968. June 4th is the same birthday as me. We were both born on the same date. Our birthdays are separated by exactly 17 years. And think about how, just in case you didn't see it, there's his birthday, June 4th. And I always called Boston the Milwaukee of the East Coast. Like, for some reason, I always got along with the people from Boston that I met. It's interesting stuff. So that's one film, right? Then there was another movie that talked about Gematria called The Number 23, which I mentioned early on in the podcast. And what's kind of spooky about this is the fact that they chose the number 23, right? Well, if you look at my birthday, June 4th, 1985, notice how it has numerology of 23, 6 plus 4 plus 8 plus 5. Now, using the alphabetic order, my full name, Derek Michael J. Takori, equals 203, which in numerology is like the number 23. My parents even got married on the date that leaves 203 days left in the year. And I'm their only son. Only kid, really. So that's pretty interesting, right? You got that 23 sync. Well, then you got this movie called Gematria, which I talked about at the beginning also. The one in which the guy just seems like some crazy dude and he's trying to predict the end of the world. Well, his name in that film is Manny Haruplex. And Manny Haruplex equals 142 and 182 reverse. My name, Derek Takori, 142 and 182 reverse. So it's kind of spooky stuff, too. And if you actually watch that film, they get to the very end of the movie, and they're trying to figure out what these last 3 digits are. He said that the world's going to end at this time, and he thinks it's 333. But then they figure it out, and it's 337. instead of 333. And my name in the reverse order equals 337. So it's like, just knock it off already, movies. Stop it. But here's the kicker to all of this. And for those of you who follow my work and are familiar with my fascination with the number 1331, it's going to blow your fucking mind. So look at the date. Let's see. I'm going to pull up the date calculator. And let's plug in my birth date, June 4th, 1985, and measure to the date that The Matrix came out. Matrix came out on March 31st, 1999. So the number 1331, it seems to be significant in relation to this film as well, right? And again, when you write out 133 and 331, it sums to 1331 in Gematria. Just like when you overlap the 33s, right? And it was the 1331 eclipse, which sums to 1331 in Jewish, that fell on November 30th, which sums to 1331. And this is the only eclipse that never hit water that I've ever seen. So this number is so significant to this study, and I like to think that I've helped discover that this number is really important. So consider that The Matrix was released on March 31st, the date written 331, like 331, and check out the date numerology, 133, 3 plus 31 plus 99. So you have both a 133 and a 331 in that numerology. And if you measure from my birth date to the date of this film, it's a span of 13 years, 301 days. So that's kind of freaky, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, guys. I like to think I'm here for a reason. I do kind of feel like I'm talking to the same people sometimes over and over, but so many of you send your support through email and come to Discord and say thank you for what I'm doing, and I appreciate that. At times I wonder how much longer I can keep this up at this pace especially, but until I feel like I stop learning something, until I feel like, people stop learning. I've got a long ways to go, though. I'm just so sick and tired of people being fooled by this ridiculous lies they see on television and allowing it to change their opinions on our liberties. That's really dangerous stuff that I hope continues to be addressed by the majority of you who watch these videos, have some sort of understanding of the language that I'm sharing, and want to help wake other people up as well. All right, everybody. So thanks for watching. That'll do it for this stream. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Keep seeking and speaking that truth. God bless and adios.